When you see the abomination of desolation. Matthew chapter 24, verse 15. Matthew chapter 24 contains a conversation between Jesus and his disciples about the future. Jesus said that one day the temple will be destroyed. Startled, the disciples asked this question. Tell us, when will these things be? That is, the destruction of the temple. And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? Verse 3. In the disciples' mind, these three events, the destruction of the temple, the Lord's return, and the end of the age, would happen about the same time. Jesus, however, gave no timetable. He did not specify when the three events would occur. What he did was to give signs that will happen right before the end of Jerusalem and the end of the age. The ultimate event that would signal the end will be the desecration of the temple by the abomination of desolation. So Jesus gives at least 10 signs of the last days. Let's review them quickly. Sign number 1, false messiahs. For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will mislead many. Verse 5. Sign number 2, world violence. And you'll be hearing of wars and rumors of wars. See that you're not frightened, for those things must take place, but that is not yet the end. Verse 6. Sign number 3, natural disasters. In various places there will be famines and earthquakes. Verse 7. Sign number 4, extreme religious persecution. Then they will deliver you to tribulation, and will kill you, and you'll be hated by all nations on account of my name. Verse 9. Sign number 5, terrible apostasy. And at that time many will fall away, and will deliver up one another, and hate one another. Verse 10. Sign number 6, rising of false leaders, offering false hope, and many false prophets will arise, and will mislead many. Verse 11. Sign number 7, multiplication of evil. And because lawlessness is increased, most people's love will grow cold. Verse 12. Sign number 8, standing to the end. But the one who endures to the end, he shall be saved. Verse 13. Sign number 9, world evangelism. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in the whole world for a witness to all the nations, and then the end shall come. Verse 14. Sign number 10, the abomination of desolation. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place. Verse 15. Our lesson will focus on verse 15, particularly on the words abomination of desolation. We will look at this verse through a series of questions. When we read verse 15, the first question we all have is this: what does the term abomination of desolation mean? The abomination of desolation. The abomination that causes desolation, as we read in the NIV. This expression is very important to the understanding of our passage. It is in fact the key to the entire passage. The term abomination of desolation has not been coined by the Lord Jesus himself. It is found 3 times in the Old Testament, all in the book of Daniel. Daniel chapter 9 verse 27, chapter 11 verse 31, chapter 12 verse 11. Let's take a look at Daniel chapter 11 verse 31 to see how it is used. And forces from him will arise, desecrate the sanctuary fortress, and do away with the regular sacrifice, and they will set up the abomination of desolation. Here we are told that the temple will be defiled by the setting up of the abomination of desolation. This expression also occurs in the books of Maccabees. The books of Maccabees are part of the Catholic canon of Scripture. Among the Protestants, however, they are not considered as canonical books, but they are included in the Apocrypha. Nevertheless, they are valuable books that allow us to know things which otherwise we would know nothing or very little about. The first book of the Maccabees is basically a historical book. It relates the history of the Maccabees from 175 BC to 134 BC. The Maccabees were a group of Jewish patriots who were active in the liberation of Judea from Syrian rule. This is what we read in 1 Maccabees chapter 1 verse 54. Now the 15th day of the month Kislew, in the 145th year, they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar, and built idol altars throughout the cities of Judah on every side. This abomination of desolation refers to the defiling of the temple in 167 BC, when the Syrian king Antiochus IV Epiphanes conquered Jerusalem. On that occasion, he defiled the temple by setting up an altar of Zeus, one of the Greek gods, on top of the altar of Yahweh. He defiled it also by ordering pagan sacrifices on that altar, including the slaughter of pigs, just to offend and humiliate the Jews. This desecrating act of Antiochus was so horrific to the Jews that it was described by the term abomination of desolation in 1 Maccabees. So the word abomination refers to something that is disgusting, something repugnant, something loathsome. It is repulsive to the sense of morality and decency. When you look at it, you just want to throw up. That is what the word abomination means. The word abomination is used in the Old Testament in Leviticus chapter 18 verse 22, where it refers to homosexual activity. You shall not lie with a male as one lies with a female. It is an abomination. It is an abomination to God, who regards homosexuality as revolting, sickening, and disgusting. That might not be the opinion of some people, but that is the view of the Bible. We find the same word, abomination, in Ezekiel chapter 7, verse 20. And they transformed the beauty of his ornaments into pride, and they made the images of their abominations and their detestable things with it. Therefore, I will make it an abhorrent thing to them. Here, the word abomination is linked to idol worship. Idol worship was regarded as disgusting, sickening, partly because it was associated in the ancient days with perverted sexual behavior. We can think of the Canaanites, for example. Archaeology has uncovered for us some of the revolting, sickening activity of the Canaanites. child sacrifices, sexual orgies, homosexuality, even temple prostitution, where prostitutes function as part of the religious worship. This whole immorality got out of hand and became so disgusting that God had to order the extermination of the Canaanites, lest they pollute the entire earth with their practices. We read in Deuteronomy chapter 20, verses 16 to 18, "But of the cities of these peoples, which the Lord your God gives you as an inheritance, you shall let nothing that breathes remain alive, but you shall utterly destroy them. The Hittite, and the Amorite, and the Canaanite, and the Perizzite, and the Hivite, and the Jebusite, just as the Lord your God has commanded you, lest they teach you to do according to all their abominations, which they have done for their gods, and you sin against the Lord your God." It is interesting to see how the Old Testament applies this nauseating feeling to abominations. Let's read Leviticus chapter 18, verses 21, 25, 27, and 28. For the land is defiled, therefore I visit the punishment of its iniquity upon it, and the land vomits out its inhabitants. For all these abominations the men of the land have done, who were before you, and thus the land is defiled, lest the land vomit you out also when you defile it, and as it vomited out the nations that were before you. When people's behavior becomes so corrupt, there will come a time when the land where they live will begin to vomit them out. Here the land represents a person with a proper sense of morality. When this person sees all the abominations, he is so deeply affected that he feels nauseous and he vomits. And this sickening thing leads to desolation, or results in desolation, or has its purpose desolation. What does desolation mean? Desolation basically means ruin, destruction. When we put the two words together, the abomination of desolation, we have an expression which refers to a disgusting or sickening entity that leads to destruction, or which has its purpose, you ruin. A person who keeps doing this kind of disgusting thing or behave in this sort of sickening way will end up in desolation, that is, in ruin, in destruction. Now let's return to Matthew chapter 24. Verse 15 tells us where the abomination of desolation will be standing: in the holy place. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place, this means that evil has reached a level such that nothing is considered as sacred anymore. Evil now has no regard for anything. It is prepared to invade everything, everywhere. Not even the holy place of the temple is sacred anymore. This takes us to the second question. The first question was, what does the term abomination of desolation mean? The second question is, what is it? Who or what is the abomination of desolation? Is it an object or is it a person? The grammatical study of verse 15 is very interesting. The word standing, estas, standing in a holy place is a neuter participle, and so denotes an object or an occurrence. But in Mark chapter 13 verse 14, the parallel passage, we find something different. Let's read this passage. Mark 13:14. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing estekota, where it ought not, let the reader understand, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Here the word standing is a masculine participle, which indicates that the reference is to a person. So in Matthew chapter 24, standing refers to an object, and in Mark chapter 13, it refers to a person. We'll come back to this observation later. For now, I would like to talk to you about 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, because it is very relevant to our lesson. In Thessalonians chapter 2, Paul speaks about the end time on the basis of the prophecy of Jesus in Matthew chapter 24. That is, he uses the same symbol as Daniel when he refers to the one who must appear before the day of the Lord can come. Let's look at 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 3 and 4, and observe the striking parallel. Let no one deceive you by any means, for that day, that is, the day of the Lord's return, will not come unless the falling away comes first, the great apostasy, and the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he sits as God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Two things will precede the day of the Lord. One is a massive revolt against God, the falling away. The revolt will be so massive that it will necessitate the return of Christ in judgment. Most of the people in the world will have gone so far that it will be beyond ever repenting. But now, notice the second element. A major feature of this rebellion will be the appearance of a very special man called the man of sin. This person will draw his power from Satan and will promote immorality and anarchy. He will be the embodiment of all that is contrary to God and to His law. His whole personality will be characterized by evil, by transgression, by lawlessness. This man of sin will attempt, and even will seem to be able to dethrone God, and then will demand worship and obedience to himself. He will sit in the temple of God and will show himself or claim that he is God. He will actually set himself up within the temple to be worshipped. This description of the man of sin is remarkably similar to the description of Antiochus Epiphanes, the abomination of desolation, who was predicted in the book of Daniel. And it is my belief that the abomination of desolation is the man of sin that Paul talks about in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. The book of Revelation identifies a person who is to arise in the last days and cause unparalleled havoc upon the world and God's people. He is called the Beast in Revelation chapter 13. It is quite likely that the Beast in Revelation is the man of sin, the abomination of desolation. This man is under Satan's control, and he will focus all the powers of evil against Christ and his followers, bringing destruction. We are told that not only he exalts himself as God, but he does, in fact, set up an image of himself in the temple. That image will appear to be alive. It will actually talk. Revelation chapter 13, verse 15. He was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast, so that it could speak and cause all who refuse to worship the image to be killed. So who or what is the abomination of desolation? Is it a person or an object? It is actually both. Remember the neutral participle of the word standing in Matthew chapter 24, and the masculine participle of the same word in Matthew chapter 13. The abomination of desolation refers not only to the man of sin, but also to the image that he sets up of himself in the temple for everyone to worship. In worshiping the image, the object, you are also worshiping the person, the man of sin. We cannot really separate the two. Let's come to the third question. When does the abomination of desolation appear? The word so at the beginning of Matthew chapter 24 verse 15 refers the reader to the preceding statement. Then the end will come. Here it is important to understand that we're dealing with the end of two events. Remember that the disciples had asked two questions. First, when was Jerusalem to be destroyed? Second, what was to be the sign of his coming and of the end of the age? Thus, our passage has a double meaning. It refers both to the destruction of Jerusalem by the Romans in 70 AD and to the end time when Christ will return. Jesus began to answer the two questions of the disciples. He gave the signs of the coming destruction of Jerusalem and of the end of the age. He said that the fall of Jerusalem is due to judgment upon sin, and the end of the age is also due to judgment upon sin. For this reason, the signs that point to the end of both Jerusalem and of the world are bound to be similar, for both are ending and being judged because of sin. The main difference is that in the end, the signs will be much more intense. That in the end time, the signs will be much more intense. We mentioned the abomination of desolation in the end time. What about the end of Jerusalem? Is there an abomination of desolation for the destruction of Jerusalem? Luke chapter 21 verse 20 has a simple description of the abomination of desolation. Instead of the mysterious style of the book of Daniel, we read, "But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its desolation is near." This verse deals with the coming destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70. When you will see the city surrounded by the Roman army, you will know that its desolation is very near. That is, there would be no deliverance to be expected. So here we are told that this abomination is the Roman military investment of Jerusalem under Titus who ordered the destruction of the city. Notice that Luke has only the word destruction, desolation, not the abomination of desolation. In fact, Luke's account is very different from the Synoptic Gospels in many ways. For instance, it does not mention that the tribulation in this period is the most intense ever to fall upon human beings. It does not mention that no human would have survived if the Lord had not cut short these days. It does not say that the time should not be in the winter. It is the only one that mentions the time of the Gentiles. These differences indicate that the Gospel of Luke emphasizes a different aspect in Jesus' teaching at this point. It emphasizes the nearer fulfillment in a judgment, the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70, rather than the end time. Jerusalem's collapse could be seen as a preview, but with less intensity, of what the end will be like. When Jerusalem falls the first time, it is not yet the end. Nonetheless, the two falls are related, and the presence of one pictures what the ultimate siege will be like. What does all this mean for us? Well, it means this. When Jesus used the expression abomination of desolation, he used it with a double reference. He spoke about Daniel as referring to an abomination and desolation after Daniel's time. We mentioned Antiochus Epiphanes, and he's also referring to an abomination and desolation that will appear after his time on earth. We mentioned the Roman army and the fall of Jerusalem. We also mentioned the man of sin in the end time. So the Lord applied Daniel's prophecy to the future, to some future after his departure for heaven. He was saying, something like the abomination of desolation in Daniel's time will recur with the fall of Jerusalem and at the end of time. One last question. What are the believers to do when the man of lawlessness appears? Christ's answer is simple. The believers are to put as much distance between this person and themselves. They are to flee from him. Matthew chapter 24, verse 16. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. This is a basic scriptural principle. Where there is evil, get away from it. Put as much distance between iniquity and yourself. The Apostle Paul used the same word flee, fugo, when he gave this advice to Timothy. Flee from youthful lusts. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 22. Don't be foolish. Don't think you cannot fall into temptation. Flee from it. The same applies to persecution. When persecution comes, the Lord Jesus told his disciples in Matthew chapter 10, verse 23, flee to the next city. The disciple is not afraid to die, but he must not invite trouble or put his life in danger. We see the same principle applied to idolatry. Therefore, my beloved, flee from idolatry, Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 14. What does the man of sin intend to accomplish? What is his goal? It is explained clearly in verse 24. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and will show great signs and wonders, so as to mislead, if possible, even the elect. His ultimate goal is to lead us astray. He wants us to depart from God. He wants us to abandon our faith. You see, in verse 21, we are told that there will be great distress, unequaled from the beginning of the world until now. This will cause Christians to long intensely for the Lord's return. Oh, Jesus, come. Please come. Save us from this situation. And there will be impostors who will come to fill our longings. False Christs, false prophets. There will be many of them, all claiming to have a divine answer to our sufferings. And among them, the man of sin. Most people will not recognize him. There's a high chance that he will come to the praise and applause of the world. And you see how dangerous the situation will be at that time. May God help his people, to endure to the end.